75-year-old James Sheahan had terminal cancer, but that wouldn't be his cause of death. It would be his friendship with a man whose greed and desperate need to be with the love of his life that would cost Mr. Sheahan so dearly. Thank you for joining me for Friends, the Murder of James Sheahan. On the morning of Monday, August 14, 2017, after not being able to get a hold of his brother, Tom Sheahan called the building manager of the Bush Street apartment. The manager called the police. Once the police gained entrance into James Sheahan's apartment, they found Mr. Sheahan lying on the floor in large pools of blood near his head and feet. There was blood on the couch, on the bookcase, on books, the walls, telephone, a fan, a box, pillows, the bed, magazines, and papers. Near Sheahan's feet was a bloody towel and tissue box, both of which were bloody. Inside the box was a pair of bloody clear latex gloves and what appeared to be wadded up bloody tissue. Sheahan had cuts on his wrist and dried blood in his hair. Mr. Sheahan had suffered 12 to 14 blunt force injuries to the head, as well as cuts to his wrist. Remember those cuts. The cause of the head wounds was from the landline phone, which was covered in blood. The cause of death was later determined to be multiple traumatic injuries. It was also determined that Mr. Sheahan had died sometime between the evening of Friday, August 11th, 2017, and the morning of Monday, August 14th. Police found a post-it note in Sheahan's apartment with the name Mike on it. When Sergeant DeCenza, the lead investigating officer, called the number on August 17th, he left a message and got a return call that same day. The Mike on the post-it was Michael Phillips. Phillips said he hadn't heard about Sheahan's murder until he had gotten the call from the sergeant. Michael Phillips said he visited with Sheahan that Friday, August 11th. He said the visit had been brief. Phillips told the police that he and Sheahan were close friends and that he often helped Sheahan. He told police that at the time of his death, he was trying to help Mr. Sheahan to arrange for cheaper home care. James Sheahan was suffering from stage 4 lung cancer. He had been hospitalized in June and July of 2017 to be treated for the side effects of chemotherapy. His condition improved, and he returned home in July. Sheahan's nurse told the police that she had seen Mr. Sheahan at his apartment on Friday, July 14, 2017, that he was weak and pale and his brother Tom was with him. She was concerned at that time that he might fall and thought that maybe he should be placed in a facility where he could get care. She told police that she saw him again at his Nob Hill Bush Street apartment on Friday, August 11, 2017. That would have been the last day that he was seen alive. And according to the nurse, he was happy. She told police that she was no longer concerned that he needed to be moved into a care facility. Police were left scratching their heads. Who would murder a terminally ill 74-year-old man? Was he the victim of a home invasion robbery? Even though some of Mr. Sheahan's expensive items were missing, the scene seemed to be staged. So the idea of a home invasion robbery was quickly ruled out by the police. If not a stranger, how about someone closer? How about a friend? Windows were left open, one in the living room facing Bush Street, where the body was found, and one in the kitchen. The kitchen window led to a fire escape that descended into a courtyard. The home care worker told the police the windows were closed when she left on Friday the 11th. She also confirmed that the bloody yellow gloves that were found in the house were not the type of gloves that she used. When Sergeant DeCenza spoke to Michael Phillips, Phillips told him that he had seen Sheahan on Friday, August 11th, after he got off work between 7 and 8 o'clock. He said that he was normally buzzed into the building. Security camera video was about to turn Phillips' facts into lies. Surveillance cameras showed Phillips entering Sheahan's building on August 12th, the day after he told police was the last time that he saw Sheahan alive. Phillips is seen first being buzzed into the building on Friday, the 11th. And then on Saturday, the 12th, he's seen entering the building with a key. At one point, he's seen carrying out items, including a painting, rolls of paper towels, a box. Later, Phillips is seen wearing black gloves. As it was becoming clear that Phillips was the suspect in the murder, detectives turned to a possible motive. Investigators spoke to Sheahan's longtime friend, Jacqueline Buckley. Buckley and Sheahan worked together for the city of San Francisco starting in 1992. When Sheahan retired in 2005, the pair saw one another monthly for lunch and a movie or a museum visit. Once while visiting Sheahan in the hospital, he told Buckley his friend Mike knew someone in the Philippines who could come to the United States to be his caretaker. After Sheahan went home from the hospital, he told Buckley that Mike wanted thousands of dollars to bring that person from the Philippines to San Francisco. Buckley said she told Sheahan that she thought this was a terrible idea. Sheahan later told her that he had decided against it. Buckley told investigators that once she had overheard Mike tell Sheahan on speakerphone that he had found someone to give him the money and that he would bring the person over from the Philippines so that they could have a wedding in October of 2017. As it turns out, the Post-it note with the name Mike on it was attached to a resume for an Archie Fuscablo, who happened to be Michael Phillips' fiancé, who lived in the Philippines. Phillips was desperate to bring Fuscablo to the United States so that they could be married, but he lacked the financial wherewithal to make it happen. This is one of those rare instances where we get to hear from the victim himself. Mr. Sheahan kept a journal, and he wrote about his misapprehensions about the friendship with Phillips. According to the journal, large red flags went up after Phillips had invited Mr. Sheahan to San Diego, California in July, the year before his murder, to stay in a Victorian that Phillips had rented. Once he got to the airport in San Diego, Phillips didn't even bother to meet Shannon at the airport to pick him up. When they met for dinner that night, Phillips presented Mr. Sheahan with a bill for $650, his share of the rental of the large Victorian they were staying in. Of the trip, Mr. Sheahan later wrote that he was feeling, quote, mostly victimized by Phillips and wondering if Phillips had only invited him to San Diego just so he could chip in on the rent in that fancy Victorian. He continued, he said, I think I was used, exploited, and mostly abandoned, and I vow never to let this happen again. In a March 20th, 2017 entry, Sheahan wrote, surprisingly, Mike Phillips called for no particular reason, but he talked about his Filipino boyfriend coming to America as soon as his visa was in order. In this really sad and ironic twist, Sheahan worried that Phillips was being taken for a sucker. In subsequent entries, Mr. Sheahan notes how Freddie, the fiancé, needs $1,400 to cover his bill, and Mike doesn't have it and can't get it from anywhere. Mr. Sheahan says that he felt like the bite was being put on him, so he nipped it in the bud by telling Phillips that he was living in uncertain times and couldn't put out any money. Sheahan finishes this episode by concluding, I don't believe Mike's story, and I don't give loans to anyone. He finished by saying, still the idea of my being solicited for money leaves me uneasy. I have the rest of the weekend to think about my situation. With these sorts of entries and with conversations from friends and family, the district attorney thought the motive for the murder was clear, that it was financial. Michael Phillips was in desperate need of money, and when Sheahan refused to give Phillips the money, he murdered his friend. Officers discovered items that belonged to Mr. Sheahan, including a box, keys, journals, a wallet containing Mr. Sheahan's credit cards. Michael Phillips was arrested and taken into custody on November 22, 2017. Though Michael Phillips maintained his innocence, the evidence against him continued to mount, including MoneyGram and Western Union reports revealing that he had transferred about $62,000 to the Philippines between July 19, 2016 and October 1, 2017. In addition to the $62,000 in the same period, Phillips sent his fiancée $55,390. When asked about the checks he'd cashed or had attempted to cash on Sheahan's accounts after his death, Phillips said that Sheahan was dying and had given him the money because he knew that Phillips needed financial help. He explained that Sheahan had given him 3 checks with different dates. Mr. Sheahan had given him several $100s on each check with the intent that Phillips would receive a total of $20,000 by his death. When confronted with surveillance video of him entering Mr. Sheahan's apartment building on Saturday, the 12th of August, or using his Wells Fargo ATM that same day, Phillips said he didn't remember. On August 24, 2018, in opening statements, the prosecution described the evidence and the manner of Sheahan's death, the video surveillance evidence linking Phillips to the murder, the police investigation, the scene of the crime, the evidence of Phillips' relationship with Mr. Fuscablo. The crux of Phillips' defense was, some other dude did it. His lawyers argued that anyone could have gained access to Mr. Sheahan's apartment and murdered him in a bungled robbery. On October 18, 2018, a San Francisco jury found 65-year-old Michael Phillips guilty on all counts, including first-degree murder of James Sheahan. Phillips was found guilty of 8 additional felonies, including aggravated mayhem, infliction of injury on an elderly person likely to cause great bodily injury, first-degree robbery, first-degree residential burglary, theft, and other crimes related to Mr. Sheahan's murder. James Sheahan was a longtime employee of the City of San Francisco's Health and Human Services Department. He is survived by his brothers Tom and Dick, both in St. Paul, Minnesota. Mr. Sheahan was fortunate to have a family of origin with whom he was in contact. This is not always the case for elderly LGBTQ+ folks, making close friends even more important. Mr. Sheahan thought he had both and was still targeted, exploited, and murdered. If you or someone you know is being abused physically or financially, check the resources in the description for help. Please subscribe to the channel.